Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good. Okay. Sekarang ni today kita ada two presentation, money laundering, money laundering and anti-money laundering act 2020 and Malaysia Code of Corporate Governance ataupun corporate governance report and corporate governance report. So these two kita akan your colleague akan present, and this one dia akan tentukan dia punya kalimah lah. This one. Final to the presentation. Jom start. Okay, jom.
Sir.
Yes.
Yang bonus mark yang sebelum ni, yang topik-topik yang kita orang present tu tak includekan ke sir?
Oh tak apa, nanti saya includekan. Sebab saya tak key in lagi dalam sini.
Noted sir.
Belum di key in dalam Windows scoreboard. Okay, jom.
Saya sharekan screen untuk wakil Aisyah dengan Asrul sir.
Okay, and then you share dalam WhatsApp group lah. Don't forget, once you masuk dalam YouTube, you need to share you punya ni lah, link.
So boleh start sir?
Tak you punya slide presentation ada tak? Dalam WhatsApp.
Ya, sir.
Okay. So do the best because this is your final, you punya kalimah lah. Around 4. You punya final kalimah.
Sir, line saya slow. Kalau play video dulu boleh? Dia tengah loading.
Okay.
So boleh start sir?
And good evening, I greet to everyone. Today, me and Ashraf would like to present to you guys about money laundering and anti-money laundering. So this is our picture, me, Nur Aisyah binti Yusfandi, and Mama Ashraf Muhammad Faizal. So the table of content, there are 6 subtopic that we would like to share to you guys. So for the first one is money laundering. Money laundering is the illegal activity and process by which criminal attempts to conceal the true origin and ownership of the proceeds of their criminal activity, allowing them to maintain control over the proceeds and ultimately providing a legitimate cover for their sources of income. The money from the criminal activity is considered dirty and the process launder it to make it look clean. Okay, kenapa dia considered dirty? Sebab criminal activity ni adalah illegal. So, daripada criminal activity ni, the launderer will gain the criminal property. The example of criminal property is proceeds of tax evasion, a benefit obtained through bribery and corruption, benefit obtained or income received through the operation of a criminal cartel, and last is the benefit or safe cost arising from a failure to comply with a regulatory requirement that is a criminal offence. And the objective of money laundering is to get the illegal fund back to the individual who generated them. Launderers usually prefer to move fund through stable financial system. So memang akan highlight apa objektif dia sebab nak dapat balik illegal fund tu. And then there are 3 stages of money laundering. First is placement, second layering, and third is integration or extraction. So for placement is the idea to move the fund from the original source into some other form that can further layer and conceal. And some of the examples are cash businesses, false invoicing, smurfing, trust and offshore company, and foreign bank account. Cash businesses ni, dia bawa masuk duit dalam bisnes, kira macam nak tukar daripada crime jadi legitimate taking. For false invoice, usually involve dummy invoice yang akan match the cash punya duit nampak macam kita sebenarnya receive payment. Smurfing, lodge a small amount of money into bank ataupun credit card, then used to pay expenses. Trust and offshore company, it is useful to hide the identity of the beneficial owner. And last is foreign bank account, di mana dia akan take small amount of money abroad and lodge in the foreign bank account, and then they akan send back to the origin country. For the layering is essentially the use of placement and extraction over and over again, using varying amount each time to make transaction as hard as possible. Contohnya, transferring the fund electronically between the countries and into and out of offshore bank account, ataupun dia move fund between the multiple bank ataupun financial institution between the account within the same institution. Ataupun dia purchase high dollar tangible goods such as yacht, luxury car and golds ataupun real estate. And last is the integration or extraction. It is getting the money out so it can be used with the attracting attraction from law enforcement or the tax authority. And kebiasaannya akan gunakan fake employee, loan ataupun dividend. Fake employee ni dia akan bayar gaji secara cash and then akan ambil balik duit itu sebab tu cuma fake employee. Loan, bagi loan ke director ataupun shareholder which will never be repaid. And last is dividend, which is paid to the shareholder which is controlled by the criminal ataupun launderers. Ataupun penambahan sale or transfer of real estate purchase or high dollar item purchase with the launderer fund. And then, we move to the money laundering vector or strategy. There are 6 strategy that I would like to share to you guys. First of all is casino and gambling venue. Under this, there are 2 type of purchases, which is purchase casino chips and check made out. Under dia ada simple operation ataupun complex operation. Simple operation ni, dia gunakan dana yang dia dapat tu, yang illegal fund tu untuk beli casino chips, and then dia hold chips tu banyak-banyak lah chips tu kan, beberapa hari, and then dia akan check made out dekat casino. Untuk complex operation dia sama je, cuma dia melibatkan beberapa country, macam contoh US dengan China contoh. Macam contoh dia pergi beli casino chips dekat Las Vegas, tapi dia minta casino transfer to Macau. And then dekat Macau lah nanti dia akan check made out. So untuk purchase premium winning ticket ni and check made out ni adalah contoh untuk horse track. Dia akan beli premium winning ticket and then dia akan check made out lah. Second is cash smuggling. Cash smuggling ni adalah suitcase yang stuffed with cash yang biasa kita tengok tu, and it is a straightforward way to physically transfer proceeds without using traditional banking network, and the prevalence of cash smuggling has actually increases in recent years due to the success of banks' anti-laundering measure. And third is life insurance policy. Under life insurance policy, the launderer purchase a single premium life insurance policy that names the launderer or a trusted associate as the primary beneficiary. And the launderer will hold the policy for a period of time, then cash out its value with a clean check from the insurer. Fourth is the security. So under this, one of the common security aid laundering scheme is involve the use of stock option transaction, which is a simultaneous puts and calls representing mirror image bets on a particular security price option. And usually, the value of the given security puts and call contract rises and falls in roughly inverse relation. And the launderer cancels the profitable contract and cancel the loss-making contract at any time. It then proceed appear legitimate complete with capital gain tax liability if applicable. Fifth, is the real estate. So kita tahu real estate ni adalah salah satu cara yang paling famous lah dalam money laundering, which is the common wealth sheltering tools for wealthy individual. Those which is politically active or engaged in business activity that run counter to the ruling party interest. It is safer for such individual to invest in high-end property. And last for the vector and strategy is currency exchange bureau. Under this, it deals in large amount of cash and routinely facilitate international value exchange. And the real downside for launderer is the currency exchange bureau is consists of high exchange fee. And under this, it is also pernah involve changing larger amount of illegal proceeds in local currency into high value notes. Next, we will proceed to the common money laundering use cases. So macam kita mesti tertanya-tanya juga, apa sebenarnya kegunaan ataupun kenapa orang buat money laundering ni. And this four is some of the cases yang selalunya digunakan dalam money laundering. So first of all is drug trafficking. What is drug trafficking? Drug trafficking is salah satu cash intensive businesses which the supply chain is often formidably complex. Contohnya macam kita tahu orang kan duk transfer drug jauh-jauh tu crossing the ocean and use multiple international boundaries. Next is international and domestic terrorism. Kenapa adanya international and domestic terrorism ni? Sebab ada a few groups which is directly ataupun indirectly support terrorist punya activity. That is embezzlement. Embezzlement ni adalah penyelewengan wang di mana those yang trusted ataupun memang diberi tanggungjawab dan amanah untuk pegang duit tu, dia ambil duit tu. Macam contoh, bank ataupun bendahari ataupun finance dalam company. Last is arms trafficking. Arms trafficking ni usually involved with small arm ataupun light weapon yang memang biasanya melibatkan senjata api. I think that's all for my part. As for now, we will I give to Asra for the next presentation.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and greetings everyone. So next part is how to detect money laundering. Okay, so the first one is unusual transaction, which is a financial activity which seem out of character compared to normal behavior. And second is large cash deposit or bank balances with little or no solid justification of where the funds come from. And discrepancy in information such as multiple or unverified identification of document. And next, complicated financial transaction, which is this action is to confuse or throw the investigators of the scent by hiding the source of the funds. And lastly is large sum of investment by third parties, which someone made a large sum of investment but without the explanation for the private funding. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so next slide is the effect of money laundering. Okay, so the first one is impact of money laundering on the economy of the country. So, money laundering has been threat to the national economies and respective government. The infiltration and sometimes saturation of dirty money into legitimate financial sectors and nation's account can threaten economic and political stability. Economic crime have a devastating effect on a national economy, since potential victims of such crime are far more numerous than those in other form of crime. Economic crime also have the potential of adversely affecting people who do not prima facie seem to be the victim of the crime, such as tax evasion result in loss of government revenue, this affecting the potential of the government to spend on development scheme, thereby affecting a large section of the population who could have benefit from such government expenditure. And the next effect is effect on the financial sector, which is this sector may get negative effect of money laundering because of financial institution, like the first point, which is banking and non-banking financial institution and BFIs and equity market, may directly or indirectly be affected. Basically, this institution facilitate concentration of capital resources from domestic saving and fund from abroad. So, all of these institutions provide impetus to furtherance of investment prospect by providing conducive environment and efficient allocation of these resources to investment project, which contribute substantially to long-run economic growth. And so, the next one is real sector. Money laundering obviously affect economic growth through the real sector by diverting resources to less productive activities and by facilitating cosmetic corruption and crime. So, money laundering carried out through the channel other than financial institution, including more sterile investment such as real estate, like Aisha explained just now, art, antiques, jewelry and luxury automobile, or investment of the type that give lower marginal productivity in an economy. So this suboptimal allocation of resource give lower level of economic growth, which is a serious detriment to economic growth for developing countries. Criminal reinvest their proceeds in company and real estate with the purpose to make further profit, legal or illegal. And then the real estate sector is the largest and most vulnerable sector for money laundering. So, kenapa dia adalah largest and vulnerable? Kerana dia ada property, dia ada diamond, sebagai contoh lah. Macam saya cakap tadi, real estate tu. So, kalau dalam konteks ni, dia ada barang yang berharga and dia punya value tu tak pelik kalau naik and tak pelik kalau turun. So, value dia kita tak boleh nak cakap value dia banyak ni. So bila ada large amount pun, so benda tu adalah logik sebab dia adalah non-transparent market. Okay, so next slide. Okay, next slide is social, which is the effect of money laundering on society. To be clear, so when dirty money is successfully cleaned by criminal, this lead to more drug crime, violence and terrorism in an ever increasing circle of criminality, which draw more and more people into its net. When such big money can be made through illegal activities, previously legitimate businesses as well as public and government employees might be persuaded to jump on a criminal bandwagon to get a share of the booty. So dekat sini, society akan ter-effect bila dia rasa macam bila dia buat benda illegal tapi dia boleh dapat duit lagi banyak daripada dia kerja seharian tu kan. So akan lagi ramai orang yang akan terjerumus dalam crime untuk menggelapkan duit ataupun others financial crime lah. So itu adalah effect on the society. And then we move to the effect on global sector. Okay, money laundering has become a global problem. Criminal target foreign jurisdiction with liberal bank secrecy laws and weak anti-money laundering regulatory regimes as they transfer illicit funds through domestic and international financial institutions, often with the speed and ease of the faceless internet transaction. So yang tu adalah macam macam mana caranya global sector ni terjejas lah dengan money laundering, disebabkan money laundering kebanyakannya akan berpindah-pindah daripada negara ke negara. So dengan adanya transfer online melalui perbankan internasional, so benda ni dia tak perlu ke kaunter, sebenarnya jadi cepat and efek dekat global sector. Bila dia dah pindahkan duit tu daripada negara A ke negara B, negara A punya ekonomi akan affected lah. Negara B pun akan affected juga, walaupun duit ada masuk tapi still affected dan daripada kesan money laundering ni lah. Okay, so that's all for effect of money laundering. We will go to anti-money laundering, which is AML. We call AML. Okay, so the definition of AML, which is anti-money laundering, refers to the web of law, regulation and procedure aimed at uncovering efforts to disguise illicit fund as legitimate income. So AML ni adalah satu bodies ataupun satu bodies lah senang cakap, ataupun regulation yang mana melawan lah money laundering ni. Kalau macam penjenayah kita ada polis, so money laundering kita ada AML. So every state ada AML, every country ada AML, sorry. So next slide. Okay. So AML in Malaysia. Okay, Malaysia has more than one regulatory agency. Macam dalam Malaysia ni, dia ada banyak regulatory agency yang pegang AML ni. So the most important of this is the Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act 2001, which is the AMLATFA. So yang ni adalah nama dia yang untuk AML dalam Malaysia ni lah. So this is a federal law that applies in all state and federal territories of Malaysia. Okay. So memang dah diorang ni macam main lah untuk money laundering, tapi agensi-agensi kerajaan yang lain still boleh masuk campur ataupun campur tangan dalam money laundering ni, such as Royal Malaysian Police, Securities Commission, Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission, Immigration Department, Ministry of Finance, Company Commission of Malaysia, Ministry of Internal Security, Ministry of Domestic Trade and so on. Okay. So we go to the AML fines. Okay, different crime under AMLATFA have different maximum penalty. So the maximum penalty for a money laundering offence under Section 4 of the AMLATFA is 15 years imprisonment and a fine of not less than 5 times the offence value. Also, not only is there a penalty for money laundering, but also non-compliance with AML regulation. In minor non-compliance, the relevant supervisory authority can send a warning letter to the relevant reporting agency. So, dia punya saman ataupun law dia akan ada penalty, akan ada penjara 15 tahun maksimum and saman tidak melebihi 5 kali daripada value yang dia money laundering tu lah. Okay, and then next is institution yang comply with the AML, which is first lawyers, accountant, license casinos, license gaming outlet, money lenders, dia ada lagi pawnbrokers, trust company dan sebagainya. So company macam ni, dia kena comply with AML. Okay, so what is considered to be money laundering in Malaysia? You guys can read. So according to Section 4, the following item ni, semua ni bila ada action yang terjadi dengan macam complete apa yang ada dalam Section 4 ni, itu adalah salah satu money laundering lah, which is engaging directly or indirectly in a transaction that involve proceed of unlawful activity or instrumentalities of an offence, acquiring, receiving, possessing, disposing, transferring, converting, exchanging, carrying, disposing of, or using proceed of unlawful activity or instrumentalities of an offence, removing from or bringing into Malaysia proceeds of unlawful activity or instrumentalities of an offence, or lastly, concealing, disguising or impeding the establishment of the true nature, origin, location, movement, disposition, the title of, right concerning or ownership of proceed of unlawful activity or instrumentality of an offence. So that's all for anti-money laundering. Next. we will go to guidance of preventative measure for professional accountant. So this like a step or guide for every professional accountant to prevent the money laundering can be happen lah. So a professional accountant shall obey the law, shall ensure that relevant staff in his or her firm receive regular training to ensure that client identification procedure and competent to identify money laundering or terrorist financing. So it is important for the client, for the accountant that works in the accounting firm to know how to detect the money laundering, and the professional accounting should verify the identity of the potential client, retain all client identification records for at least 5 years after the end of the relationship, have a sufficient understanding on his or her client and their activities as a recognition of a suspicion, shall pay special attention to transactions in which clients are involved that appear have no apparent economic or visible lawful purpose. Accountant in practice will be subject to legal requirement to report knowledge or suspicion of money laundering to an appropriate national authority. And lastly, as a professional accountant, you should not tip off a client that a report have been made. Okay, so that's all. We go to the next part. Okay, so this is one of the case study in money laundering. Okay, so solicitor's judgment clouded by long-standing client. So Miss A has practiced as a sole practitioner for 15 years, and Miss Z, a long-standing client, asked her for help in selling his house. So dalam cerita ni saya nak pendekkan. Miss ni adalah seorang macam penjual rumah, and Mr. Z ni adalah seorang klien yang nak beli rumah lah. So dalam masa Mr. Z nak jual rumah dia separuh daripada harga tu, Miss A ni dia macam find this out, maksudnya dia pelik lah. Oh, maafkan saya cakap Miss A ni penjual rumah, dia pembeli rumah. Okay, so Mr. Z ni dia long standing client, ask her for help in selling his house. So bila Mr. Z ni nak jual separuh, Miss A ni macam pelik kenapa Mr. Z ni nak jual separuh. So Mr. Z explain he is in financial difficulties and can no longer keep up with mortgage payment. So disebabkan ni Miss A has only act for Miss Z in commercial matters. So apa nak dijadikan cerita, polis contact Miss A dalam 1 tahun yang lepas and bagi tahu dekat Miss A yang Mr. Z ni pernah involved dalam trading illicit drug, and polis juga bagi dekat Miss A production order requiring her to report certain information kalau Mr. Z ni ada minta Miss A ni buat apa-apa berkenaan dengan duit ataupun transaction dengan property. So Miss A ni dia still percaya Mr. Z, and dia percaya yang Mr. Z ni tak ada masalah. So dia simpati sebab Mr. Z ni ada cakap dia ada financial difficulties. So selepas tu Mr. Z ni dia sebenarnya memang betul involved in selling drug and is subsequently convicted. So he had sold the house in hurry as he was facing confiscation proceeding. So dia dah jual dah pun rumah tu. And then so the outcome, next slide. So the outcome dari case study ni, Miss A is convicted for failing to disclose that she had reasonable ground to suspect her client was engaged in money laundering. She allowed her trust in her client to prevent her from carrying out due diligence on an unusual transaction. Sebab tu kita tak percaya sangat dengan klien kita kena still ada letak boundaries. And when she appears before the SDT, the judge acknowledged Miss A unblemished regulatory history and the fact that she has not made any personal gain. However, her offence is of a serious nature, so she is struck off and ordered to pay costs. So red flag dalam kes ni that transaction instructed by the client was unusual. The price the house was being sold at was unusually low, which is half price, and the sale was potentially loss making. And the type of transaction did not fit the pattern of previous instruction from the client. The client was also suspected of having criminal association. So that's all from my part. I will pass to Aisha. Thank you.
Thank you, Asra. So we will move on to the past year question from SCCA. And the question are, you are the manager responsible for the audit of Yoko, a chain of health and leisure club owned and managed by entrepreneur Bill Smith. The audit for the year ended 13 November 2015 is nearing completion, and the draft financial statement recognizes total asset of $27 million and profit before tax of $2.2 million. And then senior audit ada tinggal lah a few notes untuk kita punya consideration in review the audit working paper. So ada dua. First of all is cash transfer. Semasa review cash book tu, terdapat receipt of the $350,000 was identified, which was accompanied by the description of BD, which is balance down. And the bank statement showed that the following day, a nearly identical amount was transferred into a bank account held in a foreign country. When I asked the financial controller about this, she requested that I speak to Mr. Smith as he has sole responsibility for cash management. According to Mr. Smith, an old friend of his, Brian Davis, has loaned the money to the company to fund further expansion, and the money has been invested until it is needed. Documentary evidence concerning the transaction has been requested from Mr. Smith but has not yet been received. Okay. Next is legal dispute. At the year end, Yoko reversed a provision related to an ongoing legal dispute with an ex-employee who was claiming $150,000 for unfair dismissal. This amount was provided in full in the financial statement for the year ended 30 November 2014, but has now been reversed because Mr. Smith believes it is now likely that Yoko will successfully defend the legal case. Mr. Smith has not been available to discuss this matter, and no additional documentary evidence has been made available since the end of the previous year audit. The audit report was unmodified in the previous year. And the question, evaluate the implication for the completion of the audit, recommending any further action which should be taken by your audit firm. So, jawapan dia, ni saya highlight isu dulu. So, first of all is there are an unexplained cash transfer into a foreign bank account may indicate that basement is using Yoko to carry out money laundering. So, as kita tahu, money laundering is an attempt to conceal the origin and ownership of the proceeds of their criminal activity, allowing them to maintain control over the proceeds and ultimately providing a legitimate cover for the sources of their income. Next, maybe other possibility of criminal activity has been placed into Yoko bank account to enable them to transfer the fund into a foreign account. So, macam tadi yang kami berdua dah explain, biasanya memang money laundering ni kebanyakannya akan guna foreign account, dia akan salurkan ke sana. So, mungkin ada possibility of criminal activity kat sini, which can provide them with appearance of legitimacy and create a trial that is difficult to trace to the original source. Third, Mr. Smith retained sole control over cash management and that the financial controller has no oversight or involvement in this indicate with control over cash. Appear that to be no segregation of duty, which may be the intention of Mr. Smith to facilitate illegal activity. So macam ni, Mr. Smith ni je yang ada control over the cash management. So dia akan timbul lagi banyak suspicious lah sebab Mr. Smith je yang bertanggungjawab. What is he has failed to provide any documentary evidence despite the request to do so by the audit team, only arouse suspicion further. So yang ni macam agak pelik jugalah guys sebab biasanya memang any transaction ataupun apa-apa memang memerlukan documentary evidence, tapi Mr. Smith ni dia gagal nak bagi cepat-cepat, dia macam minta masa. And fifth is possible that the company is being used as a vehicle for money laundering without Mr. Smith knowledge. Yang ni pun boleh kenapa dia jadi salah satu isu juga sebab macam kita tahu tadi kawan dia yang bagi duit untuk pinjam kan for further investment. Tapi kemungkinan mungkin company yang Mr. Smith ni lah yang menjadi orang tengah ataupun dikata vehicle for money laundering tanpa pengetahuan Mr. Smith sendiri. So, apa recommendation ataupun apa yang boleh dicakap dalam case untuk cash transfer ni? First, the engagement and particularly matter related to cash transaction should now be considered as high risk and approached with a high degree of professional skepticism. Second, the audit file should now be subject to an independent second partner review. The firm may also wish to seek legal advice given the potential legal implication of dealing the client involved in money laundering. Third, to properly assess the impact of the transaction on the financial statement, the audit firm need to understand the accounting entries which have been made. So ni memang penting lah sebab memang kita kena tahu naturality of that business. So that kita tahulah macam mana keadaan company tu, so kita akan lebih senang untuk audit. Fourth, the debit side of the entry would be to cash, and the audit team should inquire as to where the credit side of the entry has been recognized. Possibly the credit has been recognized as a revenue, or possibly it has been contracted against the cash payment which was made the next day. Fifth, the situation should be reported as soon as possible to the firm's money laundering reporting officer, MLRO, and it is responsible for receiving and evaluating report of suspected money laundering from colleagues within the firm. And sixth, care must now be taken during the remaining audit that no one tips off the client that the activity is being treated as suspicious and that a report will be made to MLRO. So kalau perasan, jawapan yang telah diberikan ni memang berkait rapat dengan apa yang Ashu dah present tadi, especially on apa yang professional accountant perlu buat in order untuk prevent money laundering. Especially ni lah, kita tak patut bagi tips off to the client if ada suspicious and ataupun kita dah buat report berkenaan dengan apa yang didapat. And then next is the legal dispute. First of all is the creation of provision and their reversal in consequent years is a commonly used creative accounting technique. As such, is a potential high risk area of the audit. Second, in accordance with IAS 37 provision, contingent liability and contingent asset, the provision should only have been recorded originally. Yoko had an obligation as a result of a past event. It was considered probable that an outflow of cash would occur, and if a reliable estimate of the amount was available. And third, with legal dispute, one would expect to see some documentary evidence from legal aspects, such as the company lawyer. It is unlikely that the management assumption and a written representation would have been considered appropriate as evidence in a matter where legal expertise is required. Fourth, the lack of additional documentary evidence and Mr. Smith's lack of availability to discuss the matter with the audit team further arouse suspicion of the validity of the decision to reverse the provision. Fifth, the audit manager should contact the client and request confirmation of Mr. Smith's opinion from the company lawyer, along with any relevant documentation of legal proceeding or agreement reached with the ex-employee. And last, if the client is unable to provide any further documentation, then the provision should be reinstated in full. This should be noted that on the summary of proposed adjustment to the financial statement and sent to the client along with a request that they amend all the adjustment identified. So, I think that's all from us for the money laundering and anti-money laundering topic. Is there any question?
Okay, thank you, Aisha and Asrul. And this is considered very detailed explanations on anti-money laundering. And normally in Malaysia, the short form for Anti-Money Laundering Act, we call it AMLA. AMLA is Anti-Money Laundering Act. We have Anti-Money Laundering Act in Malaysia. AMLA, the Impact of Anti-Money Laundering Act. Cuma tadi dia tambah TF kan, Terrorism Financing. Okay, biasa kita panggil AMLA, Anti-Money Laundering Act. Okay, any question from the floor?
Sir, I got some questions.
Yes.
Okay, so like a Malaysian criminal issues, of money laundering, which is 1 MDB, on the stage of placement, what the placement they were involved with?
Tu kena check kronologi untuk 1 MDB dah lama dah. I pun dah lupa dah dia punya ni. Normally, apa yang saya faham ialah untuk 1 MDB ni, dia invest dekat overseas punya company. Which is some of that doesn't exist. And then they create the transaction. Maksud transaction tu keluar, tapi duit tu dah hilang entah ke mana. Bila when we want to call back semua investment yang 1MD buat di luar negara, they cannot give proof lah. It's either that money still exists ataupun dah tak ada. And then another thing is dia invest dalam bila dia invest overseas, and then they invest dekat certain restricted, certain yang unpermissible punya investment lah. I dah lupa lah 1MDB punya case ni soalnya dah lama kan. So you nak tahu macam apa anti money laundering activity dalam 1MDB ke?
Yes, sir.
I kena koyak semula lah dia punya cerita tu, dah lupa lah.
Tapi sir, dia kan sekata dia involved with the international bank apa semua tu kan. So is it consider foreign bank account ataupun trust or an offshore company?
Kalau itu dah detail tu saya kena baca semula sebenarnya. Yang saya faham foreign bank. Offshore tu saya tak berapa pasti. Foreign bank tu memang pastilah. Saya kena baca semula dia punya ni.
Tapi sir, based on yang saya faham dari segi 1MDB issue, ada additional which is yang Datuk Seri Najib lah yang dapat bonus ke apa yang daripada Raja Arab yang dapat 2.1 billion ke 1.2 billion like that. So is it consider trust and offshore company ke macam mana? Trust and offshore company ke ataupun smurfing?
Mana you tengok ni trust? Kalau macam offshore company tu, dia is a bank. Dia is a bank. Is a bank dan dia invest dalam tu, which is yang contohnya dekat dia ada certain company kalau saya tengok sini macam Seychelles Island, lepas tu Cayman Island, you invest dengan duit yang duit illegal tu, you boleh invest, you boleh masukkan dalam bank daripada, maksudnya dekat apa dia panggil tax haven country tu. Okay, yang tu 1MDB boleh invest dekat tax haven country, which is kalau you invest dalam kalau you masuk duit dalam bank dekat negara tu, nobody boleh detect you punya duit masuk tu, because transaction tu tak boleh appear dekat mana-mana. Untuk case 1MDB ni, for me dia kuat pandai lah untuk ambil duit Malaysia, untuk ambil duit kerajaan Malaysia, so called invest, tapi duit tu akan dapat ke dia balik. Kalau macam dekat sini investigation tu dia banyak country yang terlibat. Salah satu dia kata yang apa Raja Arab apa anak-anak Raja Arab semua tu transaction tu pun suspicious. Which is kita tak tahu hujung pangkal duit tu, tiba-tiba duit tu masuk daripada Raja Arab Saudi contohnya. Which is Raja Arab Saudi tu pun tak sure duit tu datang daripada mana. Maksud dia pun tak 100% confirm in return whether duit tu memang duit dia ataupun tidak. Sebab sekarang ni case tu macam tak ada solution lagi. Sebab sekarang ni dia orang just cari jelo tu sahaja, tetapi orang-orang di sekeliling jelo tu semua belum so called dipunish lagi lah. So dia punya tu is quite complicated, dia punya transaction tu, sebab dia melibatkan transaction banyak negara, ke Singapore, ke negara-negara lain jugalah. So saya kena baca balik kalau you all nak tahu juga tentang 1MDB, sebab dah lama sangat dah dia punya cerita ni tak settle. Sebab dia ada kronologi dia, kalau nak dicari balik kronologi tu. Okay, tu yang Rosmah yang 2.1 billion tak salah saya yang masuk dalam akaun Najib tu. Macam mana boleh masuk dalam akaun tu? Kita pun tak tahu. So saya kena cari balik 1MDB punya summary image untuk saya ni. Okay, sementara saya mencari-cari dia punya kronologi ni, ada soalan lain tak? What is Malaysian 1MDB scandal?
Sir, lagi satu sir, about yang Tun M punya era waktu 1998 kan ada duit negara makin lama makin jatuh disebabkan ekonomi kan. Adakah sebab duit ekonomi tu disebabkan forex ke ataupun selain daripada physical or tangible things?
2000 berapa tu?
1998.
1998 tu bukan George Soros punya ni? Punya case ke? Yang saya faham 1998 tu dia because of currency. Dekat situ yang bahasa pasar dia ialah George Soros ni dia beli semua duit Malaysia. Once dia beli semua duit Malaysia and then dia jual balik sekaligus. So bila penjualan duit Malaysia tu dalam satu amount yang besar, so duit Malaysia akan jadi murah lah. So yang tu yang menyebabkan currency tu, dia tak melibatkan apa-apa yang related dengan money laundering ke apa semua ke illegal activity. Dia related dengan George Soros punya speculation George Soros punya speculation yang dibuat tu menyebabkan ringgit dia jatuh. Itu lain punya, itu tak sama dengan macam dia tak sama dengan this case yang money laundering punya case ni, punya activity. Dia lain.
So it's
Itu speculation by one individu.
It's not involved on the chronology on the business lah.
Tak, dia tak melibatkan yang ini. Okay. Lain, soalan-soalan lain? Actually, 1MDB ni dia punya 42 billion kan? 42 billion saya rasa duit Malaysia hangus, hilang lenyap entah ke mana. 42 billion tu dia banyak buat investment. Investment tu kita takut investment tu dia invest and then dia punya duit tu dapat balik kepada geng-geng dia tu sahaja. Termasuklah Najib ke, Jelo ke semua tu, dia pusing-pusing ke situ. Mereka yang guna duit 42 billion tu. Because bila KPMG check, transaction semua ada keluar. Tetapi bila kita nak materialize-kan ataupun nak realize-kan balik, ataupun contohnya kalau kita nak jual balik, benda tu dah tak ada. Maksudnya benda tu just on paper. Bila kita minta balik, transaction tu dah tak ada. Duit tu dah tak ada. Itu yang jadi case tu, bila nak call balik transaction tu semuanya on paper sahaja. Bila dia cakap duit tu invest dekat Petro Saudi ke, invest dekat Cayman Island ke, invest dekat Pulau Seychelles Island ke, so bila kita nak minta balik dia dah tak ada dah duit tu. So bila korek dia kata Jelo yang uruskan semua contohnya. So itu semuanya fraudulent fraud pun ada, money laundering pun ada, breach of trust pun ada, semua dia all inclusive untuk case 1MDB itu. Tetapi data fakta dalam 1MDB itu saya kena baca satu-satu balik lah. Sebab dia punya itu is quite complicated. Untuk kita fahamkan setiap transaction yang dibuat tu, sebab dia ada banyak joint venture company, dia ada banyak investment dekat tax haven country, dia banyak inilah offshore punya bank semua tu dia buat investment. So orang yang buat ni dia sangat licik lah untuk menghabiskan duit negara. Orang mistaken 42 billion kan. Habis macam tu je. Okay, 42 billion debt. Okay, 18 billion IPP. Ni dia ada kat sini kan, top expenditure. Nanti kalau ada saya share dekat di dalam WhatsApp group. Okay, soalan lain. Dia ada banyak dia punya joint venture company. Okay, tak ada soalan ke? Okay, saya ada share yang 42 billion tu. Duit tu dilaburkan ke mana? Contoh-contohnya kepada company-company yang 8.5 billion kepada Power Tech, 2.3 billion to LKPP, 1.2 billion to GMAH. GMAH ni saya rasa dia macam untuk 0.22 billion TRX, Bandar Malaysia, Penang Land, lepas tu banyak lagi dia punya tu. Dia punya duit tu. Investment dia. Okay. Okay, kalau tak ada soalan, kita continue dengan next presentation. But before that, saya nak bagi dia punya markah kan. Okay. Dia punya markah ni Asrul dengan Aisyah sama juga dengan group presentation before this. 8.75. Slide presentation, okay. I give you 4.5. You punya presentation pun okay. Okay, I bagi 4.25. So, total you punya presentation 8.75, 8.75. 8.75 over 10. 8.75. Aisyah 8.75 over 10. So, belum sampai lagi 9 over 10. 9 per 10 tu, itu bagi saya the highest mark lah. Sekarang yang the highest is 8.75. Okay. Itu you punya carry mark untuk group presentation for this semester for this subject. Okay, next kita pergi dekat Anana GR.
Thank you,
Dan
sir.
juga Siti Syakira Zafira. 8.75 you punya markah keseluruhan untuk presentation you for this semester. Tinggi tu, bagi saya tinggi. Okay, next presentation. Boleh share you punya slide dalam group present ada MCCG. Okay, Malaysia Code of Corporate Governance. Dan juga kita ada Corporate Governance punya report. Okay, jom. Yang ni memang topik-topik popular untuk you punya ni lah. You punya di subject. Sebab dia banyak dalam you punya pasir paper.
Sir nampak tak sir?
Nampak?
Okay. Okay. So dah boleh start sir?
Boleh.
Okay. So today our group, Assalamualaikum and a very good night to all of you. Salam Ramadan. Salam Ramadan Tukada. And today our group will be presented about the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance 2021 and Corporate Governance Report. My group consists of Siti Syakira Zafira binti Muhammad Rapi and Hana Najia binti Hamran. So I'll pass to the next presenter.
Alright, so hi. So today I would like to present about the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance 2021. Okay, next. Okay, so what is corporate governance? Okay, corporate governance defined as the process and the structure used to direct and manage the business and affairs of the company towards promoting business prosperity and corporate accountability with the ultimate objective of realizing long-term shareholder value while taking into account the interest of stakeholders. So, corporate governance provide a framework of control mechanism yang menyokong syarikat dalam mencapai matlamat dia lah. Dan dia juga menghalang konflik daripada berlaku di dalam syarikat. And tunjang untuk corporate governance ni adalah seperti ethical behaviour, accountability, transparency and sustainability. Benda-benda ni semua adalah penting untuk governance company. So syarikat yang mengamalkan prinsip ni dia akan berkemungkinan menghasilkan nilai dalam jangka masa yang panjang. Alright, so next. Okay, so why care? Okay, so corporate governance yang akan menggunakan CARE, care. So care represent for comprehend, apply and report. So, okay, so care ni dia menggalakkan companies untuk identify the thought of processes yang terlibat dalam mengamalkan good corporate governance. So comprehend ni adalah understand and internalize the spirit and intention behind the principle and practices, including its intended outcomes. So for the apply, implement the practices in substance to achieve the intended outcomes of building and supporting a strong corporate governance culture throughout the company. And lastly, for the report, it is provide fair and meaningful disclosure and the company's corporate governance practices. So care ni adalah untuk kita mengukuhkan lagi kepercayaan antara syarikat dengan stakeholder by promoting fair and meaningful disclosure. So dengan mengikut cara ni, dia menggalakkan lagi culture of openness and respect. So besides kita menggalakkan culture of openness and respect, it will benefit the company and also the stakeholder. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the structure of the Malaysian Code Corporate Governance is as follows. First is principle, intended outcome, practices, and also the guidance. Okay, next. Okay, so first we will explain the what principle A. Okay, principle A, board leadership and effectiveness. Okay, next. Okay, in the principle A, we have board responsibilities. Okay, board responsibilities is the board's responsibility is responsible for the long-term success of a company and the delivery of sustainable value to its stakeholder. So effective board leadership and oversight memerlukan integration of sustainability dalam corporate strategy dan juga takbir urus serta decision making. So for the practices, the board should set the company strategy aims, ensure that the necessary resources are in place for the company to meet its objective and review management performance. So maknanya the board ni merupakan mempunyai tanggungjawab yang penting lah dalam syarikat. Okay, next I will pass to Shakira for the guidance.
Tak dengar.
Ira, mute tu.
Dengar.
Dengar.
Okay. Okay. So, baik semula. So, untuk continue. So, bila Malaysia Code of Corporate Governance ni, diorang dah buat code tu, diorang ada set the intended outcome untuk setiap code tu lah. So, untuk the board responsibilities ni, diorang punya intended outcome is for every company is headed by a board, then responsibility for the company's leadership, and collectively responsible for meeting the objective and goals at the company. So maksudnya kat sini intended outcome diorang adalah supaya setiap company tu diorang ada board of director diorang, board of stakeholder diorang masing-masing, and responsibility for the company's leadership. Maksudnya setiap leader untuk company tu mempunyai tanggungjawab untuk memastikan yang board tu ada. Macam board of director tu memang kena ada according to the corporate governance lah, and collectively responsible for meeting the objective and goals of the company. So mereka adalah tanggungjawab bersama untuk semua leadership and the board sama-sama memastikan company tu boleh achieve goals yang diorang dah tetapkan. And then we have a guidance. Guidance ni adalah macam guidance ni adalah macam dia ditetapkan oleh Code of Corporate Governance tu. So antara guidance di mana company tu perlu review, challenge and decide on the management's proposals for the company, and then the company need to monitor its implementation by management and ensure there is a sound framework for internal controls and risk management. So okay.
Okay, so next is board composition. Okay, the definition of board composition is influence the ability of the board to fulfill its oversight responsibilities. An effective board should include the right group of people with an appropriate mix of skills, knowledge, experience, and independent elements that fit the company's objective and strategic goals. So, the right board composition akan memastikan sufficient diversity and independence. Ia juga membolehkan the board tu menjadi lebih lengkap to respond terhadap cabaran yang mungkin timbul di dalam syarikat. So the practices is the nomination committee should ensure that the composition of the board is refreshed periodically. Okay, next I will pass to Shakira for the intended outcomes and the guidance. Kira mute tu.
Okay. So board, okay. For the intended outcome is a board decisions are made objectively in the best interest of the company, taking into account diverse perspective and insights. So untuk intended outcome dia adalah setiap keputusan daripada board tersebut akan dibuat secara objektif dan akan menempati the best interest lah, maksudnya yang terbaik untuk company diorang dengan mengambil kira pelbagai aspek, pelbagai perspektif, and also suggestion ke insight daripada forecast ke ataupun apa-apa performance daripada company diorang lah. And then we have the guidance. Guidance adalah for the company to support objective and independent deliberation, review and decision making, and also the board comprising a majority of independent directors allows for more effective oversight of management. So, I pass the floor to the presenter.
Okay, next is remuneration. So, remuneration is director's remuneration which is well structured, clearly linked to the strategic objective of a company, and which rewards contribution to the long-term success of the company is important in promoting business stability and growth. So, however, pay policies yang tidak berkait dengan appropriate linked directors akan remuneration terhadap strategi syarikat dan prestasi boleh mengurangkan lagi pulangan terhadap stakeholder tersendiri. So, for the practices, the board has remuneration policies and procedure to determine the remuneration of directors and senior management, which takes into account the demands, complexities, and performance of the company as well as skills and experience required. Okay, next I will pass to Shakira.
Okay, so then for remuneration, for their intended outcome is the level and composition of remuneration of directors and senior management take into account the company's desire. And remuneration policies and decisions are made through a transparent, independent process. So dekat sini remuneration ni akan ditentukan melalui level dan composition setiap director tersebut lah ataupun senior management daripada company tu. And then polisi and polisi ataupun segala keputusan berkaitan dengan remuneration akan dibuat secara transparent, iaitu secara jelas, tak ada sorok-sorok, and independent process lah. Kiranya independent process tu macam diorang akan check satu-satu and dia takkan buat sambil lewa lah. Then for the guidance, for fair remuneration is critical to attract, retain and motivate directors and senior management, as the remuneration package should take into account the complexity of the company's business and the individual responsibilities. And remuneration should be aligned with the business strategy and long-term objectives of the company. So, we go to the principle B, where it is about the effective audit and risk management.
Alright, for the principle B, first is audit committee. Audit committee plays a key role in a company governance structures. An independent audit committee is better positioned to rigorously challenge and ask probing question on the company. So company, on the company's financial reporting process, internal control, and risk management and governance. Okay, so for the practices, the audit committee has policies and procedures to assess the suitability, objectivity, and independence of the external auditor to safeguard the quality and reliability of audited financial statements. Okay, next I will pass to Shakira.
So untuk intended outcome for the audit committee is there is an effective and independent audit committee. Also, the board is able to objectively review the audit committee's finding and recommendations, and the company's financial statement is a reliable source of information. So maksudnya kat sini untuk intended outcome yang dijanjikan oleh kod tu adalah supaya audit committee adalah bertindak dengan efektif dan independen. Kemudian the board boleh review apa yang audit committee tu jumpa and ataupun boleh review balik segala keputusan berkaitan dengan audit committee, and also untuk financial statement for the company itu reliable source of information, maksudnya menjadi information yang boleh dipercayai oleh klien lah. So for the guidance is the audit committee is fully informed about significant matters related to the company's audit and its financial statements and addresses this matter. Maksudnya audit committee akan fully informed, akan mengetahui secara keseluruhan tentang kepentingannya setiap company audit tu dan macam mana financial statement tu merujuk kepada company diorang lah ataupun apa-apa status yang berkaitan dengan company diorang. So, and the audit committee appropriately communicates its insight, views and concerns about relevant transaction and events to internal external auditor. So, untuk audit committee ni sepatutnya diorang perlu communicate untuk diorang punya cadangan ataupun pandangan ataupun kebimbangan tentang concern macam isu-isu yang diorang macam ada isu dengan relevant transaction, ada isu berkaitan dengan relevant transaction ataupun apa-apa perkara yang terjadi dalam company diorang kepada internal dan external auditor. So, I'll pass the floor to the next presenter.
Alright, next for the principle B, risk management and internal control framework. So, it is a proper risk management and internal control are important aspect of a company's governance, management and operation. So, risk management focus on threats and peluang, manakala internal control ni dia lebih kepada helps to counter the threats and take advantage of the opportunities. Okay, so for the practices, the board should disclose the feature of its risk management and internal control framework and the adequacy and effectiveness of this framework. Alright, next I will pass to Shakira.
So untuk intended outcome dia adalah companies make informed decision about the level of risk they want to take and implement a necessary controls to pursue the objective. So outcome dia adalah bila kita dah tahu pasal internal control dan juga control framework ni, company akan buat keputusan yang sesuai dengan level risk yang ada dalam company diorang dan akan implement action-action tertentu untuk menyelesaikan masalah tersebut lah. So dia akan saling macam memerlukan. Then for the guidance is the company need to determine the board need to determine the company's level of risk tolerance and actively identify, also assess and monitor key business risks to safeguard shareholders, investment and the company's asset. So next we move to the principle C, integrity in corporate reporting and meaningful relationship with stakeholders.
Okay, first, engagement with stakeholders. So, is ongoing engagement and communication with stakeholders will build trust and understanding between the company and its stakeholder. So it provides stakeholder a better appreciation of the company's objective dan kualiti pengurusan dia lah. So dengan cara ini dapat juga membentuk stakeholder dalam menilai syarikat dan memudahkan lagi shareholder untuk tentukan how their vote should be exercised. Okay, so the practices, the board ensures that there is effective, transparent and regular communication with its stakeholder. Okay, so next.
So for the internal outcome is the board continuous, there is a continuous communication between the company and stakeholders. Stakeholders are able to make informed decisions with respect to the business of the company, its policy on governance, the environment and social responsibility. And for the guidance, the board should undertake active engagement with the relevant stakeholders, establish channels for stakeholders to provide their views and feedback, including complaints. So untuk internal outcome ni, company akan ada continuous communication, maksudnya komunikasi secara berterusan lah antara company dan juga stakeholders tu, contohnya macam employees, directors, customers and consumers. Then stakeholders akan sentiasa dimaklumkan dan juga boleh buat keputusan with respect berkaitan dengan company punya business, also berkaitan dengan polisi on governance dan juga environment, also their social responsibility lah. And for the guidance, the board should undertake active engagement. Maksudnya the board tu diorang sepatutnya aktif untuk melakukan engagement dengan relevant stakeholders lah, antaranya stakeholders, maybe dengan cara establish channels for stakeholders to provide their views. Maksudnya untuk stakeholders ni kan antara consumers and customers, also investor and so on. So diorang bila contoh the board tu akan bila the board establish channel, maksudnya satu platform untuk diorang bagi tahu diorang punya cadangan ataupun feedback selain komplain lah, cadangan ataupun feedback berkaitan goods or services daripada company untuk company diorang lah. Okay.
Alright, next is conduct of general meetings. So it was an important platform for directors and senior management to engage shareholder to facilitate greater understanding of the company's business, governance and performance. So mesyuarat agung ni dia membolehkan dan menyokong lagi shareholder dalam menggunakan dia ownership and menyatakan pandangan mereka kepada the board and the senior management dalam mana-mana bidang yang boleh menjadi kebimbangan kepada mereka. So for the practices, the chairman of the board should ensure that general meetings support meaningful engagement between the board, senior management and shareholders. So chairman kena memastikanlah benda macam ni menyatakan pandangan semua ni kepada the board and senior ni adalah pentinglah dalam conduct of general meetings. So next I will pass to Shakira.
Okay, so for the intended outcome adalah shareholders are able to participate, engage the board and senior management effectively and make informed voting decision at general meeting. So bila ada general meeting ni, shareholders diorang akan participate tau. Diorang contoh macam general meeting ni akan diadakan atas beberapa sebab. So bila beberapa sebab tu dia akan affect the shareholders. So shareholders ni boleh participate and boleh bagi tahu dekat board and senior management secara efektif dan boleh buat decision secara voting. Voting ni mengundi lah. Kalau kita belajar dulu, kita kan ada mengundi contoh macam diorang akan stand to the majority. And also for the guidance, the company need to ensure that shareholders are given sufficient notice and time to consider the resolutions that will be discussed and decided at the general meeting. Yang ni adalah common untuk semua general meeting yang annual general meeting ke, all the shareholders perlu diberi notice ataupun masa untuk consider untuk hadir ke tak hadir untuk general meeting tu. Dan notice tu tak silap dia ada tempoh yang dah ditentukan untuk supaya shareholders tu dapat. So company perlu memastikan benda tu di-execute lah. Okay. So next is my part for the corporate governance report. So untuk corporate governance report ni mostly hanya teori saja because dia menekankan on for the definition, the corporate governance disclosures as an opportunity to demonstrate to stakeholders that they have holistic and effective corporate governance arrangement. Maksudnya kat sini, corporate governance report ni adalah disclosure yang kita buat dekat contoh macam financial statement atau financial performance tu, disclosure kat situ di mana dia akan tunjukkan ataupun tunjukkan bagaimana company tu punya corporate governance tu bertindak secara efektif atau tidak dalam company diorang. Also it will provide informative disclosure on their application of the MCCG practices. So untuk company yang corporate governance ni, dekat disclosure untuk corporate governance report juga akan provide informative disclosure lah. Maksudnya info-info yang berkaitan dengan cara bagaimana company itu apply dalam cara company itu apply diorang punya MCCG practices. Also they can access to regular, reliable, comparable and integrated assess the stewardship of management, valuation of the company and the ownership structure. Maksudnya kat sini the stakeholders ke atau shareholders akan boleh access macam untuk tengok regular ataupun adakah company ni boleh dibandingkan boleh bandingkan diorang punya performance tu by the information yang ada dekat dalam corporate governance report tu. Sebab dalam tu ada stewardship, ada chart of management, valuation of the company maksudnya penilaian company itu sendiri dan juga ownership structure. So untuk practices ada, sekejap. Okay. Untuk practices ada 4 poin utama di mana kat sini first kali ada explanation. Practices kat sini maksudnya apa yang perlu ada dalam corporate governance report tu lah. Untuk corporate governance report tu yang pertama kena ada explanation, provide an explanation for the departure. Departure tu maksudnya apa-apa yang berkaitan dengan info-info yang perlu ada dalam corporate governance. Then we have a disclosure where dalam tu kena ada information about the disclose the alternative practice it has adopted and how the alternative practice achieve the intended outcome. Kita akan tengok macam mana daripada disclosure tu, kita akan tengok macam mana apa yang diorang apply daripada MCCG tu kena tak dengan intended outcome yang MCCG dah tetapkan dalam MCCG tu lah. Kiranya macam kalau company tu dia follow according betul-betul MCCG tu, dia akan dapat intended outcome yang diperlukan lah. And then we have the actions which they have taken or intend to take and the time frame required. Maksud kat sini action ni perkara-perkara yang perlu diambil tindakan berdasarkan keputusan daripada the board tu sendiri, dan perlu ada time frame required untuk setiap tindakan yang perlu diambil based on the decision. Then for last but not least, a guidance where companies should carefully consider whether the disclosures would enable stakeholders to evaluate how the principles and practices of the MCCG have been applied. So saya kat sini, setiap company tu perlulah secara berhati-hati untuk memastikan disclosure tu boleh buat stakeholders tu menilai sendiri macam mana prinsipal dan practices yang kita dah bagi dari awal-awal tadi diamalkan secara betul ataupun tidak berdasarkan disclosure. Disclosure tu kita boleh kata macam report akhir lah, macam prestasi, performance company itu sendiri. So I think that's all from us. Thank you, Q&A session.
Okay, thank you for this group. Saya ada share kan, ada 3 sampel corporate governance report. Okay, kita ambil contoh, kita ambil TNB. This one dia ada 83 pages corporate governance report dia. Okay, corporate governance report. Section A, section B. Yang kawan you cerita tadi tu dia ada intended outcomes dia. Section A, disclosure on Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance. Ada intended outcomes dia, and then dia ada dia punya kotak-kotak yang kawan you cerita tadi tu lah. Okay, dekat sini semua corporate governance punya issue, punya items, punya rules, regulation, requirements semua dia masuk dalam ni. Okay. Ada board punya composition, ada integrity, ada control system, ada succession planning, pengganti-pengganti yang akan datang, succession planning. Ada chairman's responsibility, board responsibility. Dekat sini juga, ini corporate governance lah. Lagi dekat sini ada role company secretary. Okay, dan lain-lain. Ini yang dia template dia sama. Dia just isi yang ni untuk Samdabi. Kalau dia apply, dia akan tulis apply. Dia punya action dia. Dia apply lah. Dalam ni sama je, ada strategic planning, ada challenge meeting, ada key, ada banyak, ada di apa ni CG punya isu lah, ada risk management punya matters, ada banyak. Dia ada yang ni macam Samdabi dia ada 65 pages dia punya ni. So kita tengok sama sama ada all this company dia follow tak Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance tu. Kalau ikut tengok pada sini semuanya apply saja. Tak ada yang tak apply lah. Ini appointment of company secretary. Saya rasa semua ni di ikut praktis 1.5 ni dalam ni benda yang sama je, lebih kurang company pun cuma dia olah-olah sahaja. Yang penting ni action taken je tu, dia apply ke tak dengan MCCG 2021. Okay. Board charter, saya rasa di ikut praktis ni, praktis 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 ni. Ni MCCG 2021 yang kawan you present ada 68 pages ni. MCCG 2021. Okay, principle A, principle B, principle C. And then dia ceritalah apa dalam tu, intended learning outcome, intended outcome dia, and then semua rules and requirement, semua yang kita kena follow, we care. Okay, waktu saya nak tahu in detail, you boleh baca MCCG ni, corporate governance. Okay, Saya nak tanya, mana pasir paper yang saya share dekat dalam grup WhatsApp ni? You all tak present. Ini kan saya ada share. Contohnya, ini saya share. Sebab saya dah tolong carikan dah. Dia punya ni, MCCG.
Kita tak letak pasir paper sebab kita rasa macam slide kita banyak sangat.
Dia half ialah presentation berkaitan topik and another half sepatutnya ialah pasir paper ni lah. Discuss bukan. Yang ni profession. Okay. Dia tanya, write short notes on the following: the concept of corporate governance, objective of good corporate governance system for companies, internal audit committee, code of best practice for director of company. Ini contoh-contoh yang saya dah cari untuk you masukkan dalam you punya slide presentation. Konsep, role of Malaysia MICG, responsibility of audit committee, ada dalam you punya presentation tu, tapi dia tak ada spesifik untuk pasir paper tu. Yang betul-betul pasir paper tu. Okay, yang tu je you punya kekurangan tu. Sebab corporate governance ni nanti bila you nak jawab ni, bila you nak jawab test dengan nanti you tak dapat idea macam mana jawapan untuk you punya untuk you punya test 1, test 2 and final exam nanti. That's why saya nak biasakan you dengan pasir paper tu. Okay, tak apa. Any question from the floor dulu? Ada soalan? Tak ada ya? Okey. Kalau tak ada, MCCG ni tak ada masalah in terms of presentation sebab because you are presenting MCCG yang this one. Okay, you just summarize dia and then you present, which is info semua ada dalam ni lah, siap. Okay, you punya kekurangan tu sebab you tak ada pasir paper sahaja, the rest tu you ada. At least 1 ke 2 ke pun dah cukup dah. Itu je you kurang. So you punya markah tu saya bagi 8.75 jugalah. Dan secara overallnya sama macam grup-grup yang lain jugalah. 4.25 ni punya kering mark ialah 8.75. And then dia tak boleh sampai achieve tu sebab still ada kekurangan here and there lah. Sikit ni punya presentation tak ada masalah, tapi yang saya cari ialah pasir paper tu sebab saya dah share. So you tak ada kat situ. So saya potong 0.25 tu untuk yang itulah. The rest tu should be no problem. 8.75 ni tinggi bagi saya. And then now we focus on the individual presentation. Okay, Boris Mak ni ada seorang saja yang tanya, Syafiq Reza. Tanya pasal 1MDB yang tadi tu, the rest tu tak ada soalan lah. Okay, ada soalan tak sebelum kita end kita punya kelas today? Dan kita jumpa kita punya final class untuk sebelum hari raya ni, hari Khamis malam. Kita akan settlekan 3 presentation. Water accounting tu tak banyak sangat. Mungkin kita boleh shortkan dia punya tu. CSR, ingat ya, separuh presentation tu adalah topik ni. Separuh lagi you kena jawab soalan pasir paper tu. Okay, ia akan membantu you untuk membuat individual assignment nanti. Okay. Ada soalan? Kalau tak ada soalan, till we meet again on Thursday malam jam 10. Okay. See you then. Assalamualaikum. You are welcome. You are welcome. Bye-bye.
Sir.
Yes.
Saya nak tanya pasal water accounting, sir. Water accounting. Saya share slide dulu, sir. Share screen.
Boleh. Water accounting tu saya ada 2 soalan pasir paper saja.
So saya refer dekat dia punya website dia ke macam mana?
Boleh, tak ada masalah. Water accounting ni mungkin 15 pages you explain, lepas tu pasir paper. Ada 2-3 pasir paper lah. water accounting ni actually dulu punya cerita sebenarnya. Tapi dia still ada dalam pasir paper, so kita discuss sedikit lah pasal water accounting ni. Ni pasal environment sikit kan.
So untuk content ni sir, saya akan ambil yang pasal introduction yang kat sini. Lepas tu dia ada ni framework, dia ada dua. Satu background, satu lagi methodology. Yang research ni dia based on the case study.
Okay.
So kalau saya pergi kepada symposium ni tak ada apa-apa lah. Symposium ni yang mana dia akan collaborate dengan mana-mana organisation yang berkaitan dengan water management lah.
Okay.
Lepas tu yang ni sir, background ni saya nak terangkan ke semua ke macam mana?
Ni sikit je sebab you kena cari dekat contoh water accounting. Dia punya water accounting, corporate water accounting ni. Cuba you tengok kat sini. Contoh saya bagi ni.
Okay.
Slide ni nanti saya share dekat sini. Kat sini pun ada water accounting punya.
Okay.
Share dalam.
Saya share dalam group je.
Malaysia tak ini sangat sebenarnya pasal water accounting ni.
Dia dekat corporate corporate.
Macam dia punya figure ni, ini yang pentingnya. Dia nak present tu.
Sekejap, saya share dulu deh. Sebab ini saya jumpa yang PDF punya. Ini saya. Yang ni ke? Konten dia yang saya nak.
Ini macam terlalu detail. Nanti you akan present sebab dia 60 pages kan. You akan present banyak.
So macam mana nak cari dia punya konten. Saya search memang dia terus kepada ni je terus.
Kalau you tengok itu water accounting yang ni, slide ni. Water accounting and auditing. Rapid water accounting. Water auditing. Ini pun okay. Ada share tak dia water accounting yang slide yang saya share. Water accounting.
Sir, kan saya kata limit slide kan 30. So kalau kita orang slide kita orang lebih daripada 30, tak apa je lah kalau kita orang tak letak pasir paper kan, sebab Kira cakap macam tu.
Tak, sebab saya nak dia jadi half-half. Dia tak, maksudnya you kena compresskan slide you. Contohnya presentation slide you 20. Daripada 30 tu compress jadi 20. Mungkin 5 pages ke atas tu pasir paper. Dia tak boleh present semua sekali untuk yang tu.
Tapi macam tak relevan je sir. Markah grup Tira tinggi sangat tu untuk tak ada pasir paper.
Dia bukan markah sebab dia ada empat, kita ada 4 round. So kita ambil overall keseluruhan. So markah dia tu merangkumi 4 presentation. Overall lah keseluruhan tu.
So markah dia orang hari ni?
Markah untuk Karimat tu 8.75 tu untuk overall 4 round tu lah.
So yang saya cakap 8.75 tu bukanlah markah untuk hari ni sahaja.
Markah hari ni untuk hari ni dan keseluruhan. Untuk hari ni saya potong markah dia untuk dia punya pasir paper tu.
0.25 je.
0.25 lah untuk pasir paper tu. Maksudnya dia tak ada, walaupun 1 walaupun 2 dia tak ada. So saya potong dekat situ lah.
So tak apa, kau cerita tak apa je lah, kira tak pasir paper je.
Tak apa, tapi saya takut you dapat makan 8.5. Macam tu pula kan. Instead of saya bagi 8.75 tu, dia jadi kurang daripada tu. Dia tak boleh compare macam tu. You kena tengok. You buat topik apa tu?
Islamic Accounting and Zakat.
Islamic Accounting and Zakat tu, saya dah tolong carikan pasir paper dia. You cuma kalau tak boleh separuh pun, daripada contoh 30 slide tu, at least 5 slide tu pasir paper. Itu saya potong markah dekat situ. Maksudnya daripada 30 slide tu, saya potong 5 slide terakhir tu contoh untuk markah pasir paper dia tu.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, welcome.
Sir, so yang ni so saya refer dekat situ lah. Yang sebagi
itu pun boleh you refer juga.
yang apa tu, yang lagi satu sir, kalau yang yang macam framework ni nak gambaran ni nak tunjukkan ke macam mana?
Yang ni saya prefer you tunjukkan lah sebab baru nampak corporate water accounting tu dia punya cycle dia ni. The role of water accounting in advanced sustainable water management. Kalau you ada framework yang lain pun boleh guna juga.
Okay. Alright. Memang limit slide presentation 30 kan. So pasir paper pun kena sekalikan dalam 30 lah at the maximum.
Kena combine juga dalam tu lah. Sebab dia memang ada dua bahagian, dua part. Pasir paper dengan presentation yang dibuat tu.
So untuk saya punya part dengan Syarul punya, so pasir paper ada 2 lah.
Water accounting tak banyak pun, ada 2 macam tu je. So dia boleh jadi macam 4 slide sahajalah you punya pasir paper tu. That's why yang before this dia come out dengan case study tu kan. Untuk ganti dia punya pasir paper tu.
Alright. Okay, noted sir.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you sir.
Okay, you're welcome.
So minggu ni saya sekalikan lah untuk last presentation.
Last present untuk sebelum hari raya. Untuk you punya group presentation.
Okay, noted sir.
Okay.
Thank you sir.
Okay, welcome. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.